All bands of Russian soldiers thrust deeper into eastern Ukraine this Tuesday. Their advance came at the coal mining town of Dobropillia, 10 kilometers of a push, according to Ukraine's deep state war mapping site. Deep state also said that the Russians had surged forward near 3 villages on a section of the front line associated with the Ukrainian towns of Konstantinivka and Pokrovsk, which Moscow is trying to encircle by exploiting Kyiv's lack of manpower. This all comes ahead of a summit this week between Russian President Vladimir Putin and the US President Donald Trump, which European Union states fear could end in peace terms imposed on an unlawfully shrunken Ukraine. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky still is not invited to this summit. Let's bring in Emmanuelle Chaze, our correspondent, who's awaiting for us in Kyiv for more on this situation. Emmanuelle, Ukraine making impact across Russia in various different places. But the main story from the front is this push by Russia in the east. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, it's been a few days now that we've seen what appears to be Russian advances towards a strategic route between the settlement, the cities, of Dobropillia and Kramatorsk in eastern Ukraine, in the region of Donetsk. There was alarm today as Ukrainians woke up to this map showing an advance of some 10 kilometers towards this strategic road. Over the course of the day, the Ukrainian army and the president actually said that there was no breach of Ukrainian defenses that was so significant that we could say that the Russian army has implanted itself past the Ukrainian lines of defense. Instead, what seems to be the case in that direction is that groups of Russian soldiers, saboteurs, have managed to go through. They haven't reached the road yet, as far as we know from open source information. And in that, the Ukrainian army doesn't confirm those advances. What we can say is that this road is a strategic access between the cities of Kramatorsk and Dobropillia. It has been closed down to civilians because it was already controlled for weeks now by Russian drones. So it has become too dangerous for civilians to use this road. And overall, in the sector of Dobropillia, there's daily bombing. There are evacuations taking place because there are still hundreds, thousands of people who are there. Most of them are also displaced people from villages already under Russian occupation. So the humanitarian situation is, as we mentioned it many times before, very dire in the region.
And we've discussed many times too how nobody in Ukraine trusts Vladimir Putin and Russia on any development that is made diplomatically. And with that, we turn to the meeting between Trump and Putin later this week, to which, of course, Vladimir Zelensky is not invited. Neither are members of the European Union. And clearly, from Ukraine's perspective, it's about getting Zelensky somehow into that room in Alaska.
Absolutely. We've seen over the past few days the Ukrainian president calling many allies, and tomorrow will be, I think, quite defining for the relationship between Kyiv and its allies, also with the US, because there's going to be 3 meetings. First, the EU leaders, the NATO General Secretary and Ukraine will talk. Then there will be a talk with the European leaders, Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky. And finally, the coalition of the willing, those of the countries who pledged military support to Kyiv, will also gather to discuss what transpired from the other 2 meetings. So we see really Kyiv and its allies really trying to get together to come up with a plan. Of course, Ukraine would like to see more pressure against Russia rather than to have to comply to anything, because the US and Russia would like Ukraine to do so. And on that note, it is important to remind that Ukraine simply doesn't have to listen to whatever comes out of a meeting on Friday, for example, on the territorial concessions. We've talked a lot about those. It is against the Ukrainian constitution that its president should simply give away land, give a plan, and that's also something that Volodymyr Zelensky reminded time and again over those past few days.
Worth noting too, Emmanuelle, that Putin so far has made no concessions. Donald Trump, it appears, willing to listen to whatever Putin wants. Emmanuelle Chaze in Kyiv, thank you, as always, very much indeed, and do stay safe. Thank you for joining us.